Hey guys, to help run the forums, host the website, and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. My goal is to be unbiased and transparent. It's a privilege to serve you. This is not an endorsement. Let's get into it. Well, we took a ride to this beautiful park, and I'm on one of BULLS' most popular e-bikes. This is the Cross Lite EVO. It used to be the Cross Lite E, but EVO is talking about that integrated battery. So we've got the Bosch PowerPack on the older model, and now the PowerTube on the newer model. Really beautiful, keeps the weight even lower. It makes this look like a regular bike in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's a little bit larger on that down tube, but it's very well protected, and it frees up the lower portions of the frame, and it means you don't have to have a rack battery. They sell this product in 3 different frame designs, okay? And we're looking at the Wave, like extremely low step through right here. Very approachable. That low standover height means you can just, step right over, just like that. And that's especially nice when you have a rear rack, because you might have that loaded up with a trunk bag or maybe a child seat or panniers or something. Or maybe you're someone who has like hip and knee issues. I've actually got some myself, and it's nice to just be able to approach the frame and maybe you're riding along and you need to make a quick stop. You can just kind of jump forward and stabilize the bike very easily without worrying about getting hung up on like a high step model. So we've got the Iconic over here, and on this model it's technically a high step, but BULLS does a really good job of sort of sloping their top tube, so all of their bikes are a little bit more approachable that way. I'm actually riding and enjoying the mid-step or trapeze version of the bike right here, and it combines the more approachable frame with one that's fairly rigid because you've got 2 separate tubes, and that triangle creates a really strong, just sort of reduced frame flex. You can see here on the Wave, they've got a little top tube right here, and it's for the same reason. They're just trying to reduce flex and make this a very efficient ride, but still approachable. I like that. This thing comes in 4 frame sizes, and I'm looking at the 48 over here. This is a demo model, so the sticker says 49, and I can't verify the exact measurements. I have measured this demo bike. They could be a little bit off. I do my best back at the site just to map everything out, but this is a snapshot of what I'm seeing, and it is nice to have access to both bikes here. Been very impressed with the little upgrades they've made over the past year and a half, including the drivetrain. So we've got Shimano Dior XT. Okay, so XT is a little bit higher in terms of performance. It's lightweight and an incredibly large range, so 11 to 46 tooth. A lot of other e-bikes just go like 11 to 32 or maybe 11 to 42, and this one's 46. I mean, that's incredible. Look at how big that large sprocket is back there, and that's going to make it easier to climb. I was talking to the folks at BULLS about that. I was like, man, is that really necessary? I mean, you've got a Performance Line CX, that's like the mountain model, extra torque up to 75 Newton meters there. There is a Bosch Performance Line, non-CX, and there's also Bosch Active Line. Like, why do you have, I mean, look at this, it's not a mountain bike. And they were kind of joking with me like, well, everyone loves the little compact car with V8 in it. And yeah, I mean, I get that. If you're someone who weighs a little bit more, or maybe you've got that child seat mounted or something, it is nice to have a little bit of extra power. And then these wheels, they're a little bit larger. This is 700C, so that's roughly 28 by 1.5 inches compared to like 26-inch tires. So 28, it's a larger diameter. It lowers the attack angle, so you span cracks and overcome bumps a little bit more easily, but you still get pretty good air volume. And that might add a little bit of comfort. So I love that they have the reflective sidewall stripe. These things are puncture protected. They're good tires. Schwalbe does a really good job. And then they've got alloy fenders here, which I really appreciate. And you can see how they're connected to the rack here and here. They haven't been rattling on me, which is really nice. And then of course you've got some comfort upgrades. So we've got the Suntour NCX suspension fork with, it's like multi-step compression all the way to locked out. And it's an air fork, so it's going to be a little bit lighter weight, and you can sag it down, maybe match your body weight a little bit better. So I'm a lightweight rider. I'm like 135 pounds. If I weighed more, I would want to, add some more air volume to this so that I'm getting the right amount of travel. It's a nice fork, I think it's 63 millimeters of travel, so it's not quite as long as like over here we have 120 millimeters of suspension. I mean, this is like a mountain bike, but meant for the urban environments. It's got the really big tires that add comfort. a little bit more stability there, but a little bit less efficient too. BULLS is a German company, and they've got like kind of a dealer-owned co-op thing going on over there. So I've always felt like they were high quality, but a little bit more affordable in terms of pricing. You might not think $4,400 is cheap, but when you look at the PowerTube, you look at the integrated lights. This is Fushan 100 lux with that headlight. We've got an integrated backlight right here. It's built right into the rack. That's pretty fancy. Nice reflectors and stuff. And then the drivetrain we talked about, nicer components all the way around. So we've got a heavy adjustable kickstand. We've got hydraulic disc brakes, 160 millimeter rear, 180 up front. That's fine for an application like this. And then the spokes, they're 13 gauge in the rear and 14 up front. So it's actually a little bit thicker and a little bit more durable in the rear. And again, I think that comes back to the rack. So this is iRack. I think it's rated up to like 55 pounds, 25 kilograms. And yeah, I mean, this is set up so you could use one of the kind of the child seats that clamp onto the side. It's also got this little spring latch built right in. Just lots of utility all the way around here. And I know a lot of people that I'm friends with are talking about like, yeah, you know, e-bikes do weigh a little bit more. This is about 49.9 pounds. That's what I weighed it at. And again, I weighed the 48 size. This frame right here that you're looking at. It's nice to be able to actuate those brakes a little bit easier. Hydraulic disc brakes are one of my favorite solutions because they offer adjustable reach, so you can bring those levers in a little closer if you're wearing gloves or maybe you have smaller hands. They give you awesome stopping power, and a lot of times, you know, in North America, the right brake lever handles rear braking, okay? And you can imagine like a mechanical cable going all the way back here. That's more effort to pull the cable, and over time it stretches and stuff. So hydraulic, they're both very consistent. They're both easy to actuate. It's going to allow you to focus more on just the road, maybe talking to your friends or your kid or your cargo, really like that. And then I talked about the suspension up front, but we've got a nice Celi Royale Shadow Plus saddle here. And this is 31.6 millimeters on the seat post, so you could swap that out and get like a suspension post. Kind of $100 to $150 range on those. And then this gets sort of like full suspension feel. That's probably what I would do if I was commuting a little bit further. And the range on this battery being roughly 500 watt hours, you're gonna get 30 to 100 miles, really depending on the level of assist that you choose, the air pressure in those tires, the steepness of the hills, all that. How much you weigh, it all comes into play here. But I just love that they've got multiple frame sizes to choose from. They've got a lot of adjustability here and really comfort oriented. These are the GP10s from Ergon, all black, ergonomic, locking grips, a little bit of a rise to this handlebar. I love the shifters. Again, coming back to that nicer Dior XT drivetrain, you've got two-way high shifter, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 shifts on the low shifter. That's amazing. That's something I haven't seen on some of the SRAM components that I've been exploring on some of the other bikes. So to me, this is just it's an awesome bike. I really like it. And if you don't like this rack for any reason, they've even got bosses for adding your own rack aftermarket or a different fender or something. Maybe you want to reduce the weight or you live somewhere where you don't really need fenders. There's just a ton of options. They even squeezed in bottle cage bosses right there on that top tube, which is really nice. If we come over to the wave frame, they've got bosses there as well, and that's something that a lot of other companies just skip because they figure, well, you don't want to kick the bottle cage. Yeah, that's true. You don't. But maybe you want to have a little mini pump or a folding lock, or maybe you're just going to be careful and you want to be able to reach that bottle because, you know, the cockpit does get a little bit crowded. The display panel on this is kind of smaller, stays out of the way. This is called the Purion, very easy to reach. And I'm gonna go over the details on that in a minute, but they've also got a bell built in. They've kind of set this thing up. There's really nothing you should have to add yourself aftermarket. You're gonna stay clean with those fenders and this plastic chain cover. Really appreciate that. 18 tooth sprocket up here. You can't see it, but I confirmed that when I was doing all the specs and stuff. So I feel like you've got plenty of range to climb or hit and even exceed the 20 mile per hour top speed that this drive system supports. I like that they've even got a little plastic slap guard in there. A lot of companies, it's like, you don't see it, so they don't, you know, especially with the cover here, so they don't add the slap guard, but I like that. It's gonna mean that you don't nick up that beautiful black paint job. And this is sort of a matte with gloss black and then some silver accents. It's really nice. All the accessories are black. That tends to be the case with a lot of drive systems and batteries and fenders and forks. It's just a beautiful looking bike. Now, you know, I do want to complain a little bit. This light, it'd be nice if it was mounted up higher. This can get blocked a little bit by the fender and by the front wheel, and it's going to bounce up and down because it's on the arch of the suspension. compared to over here with the Iconic. See, they put the light way up high on the handlebars. Okay, very similar light. I like that this one has like the side view, so a little bit of light comes out from the side. It's kind of the same thing. I think they might actually be the same light. They just mounted this one to the fork instead of up high, and I'm not really sure why that's the case. The hub spacing here is 100 millimeters. You've got 9 millimeter quick release skewers front and rear, 135 millimeters in the back. So everything else on this bike is pretty traditional. I don't know if these are actually the stock pedals that the bike comes with or not, but I like them. They're kind of grip tape, give you good traction, and they're not gonna scrape you up quite as much as metal ones like the cage style or get bent up. This is another option. I'm not sure if this is the pedal that the bike's actually gonna come with, but it's also good, kind of rubberized and stuff. I think it's perfect for this sort of application where you're just riding around the neighborhood and stuff. These are really not set up to go off-road with this kind of tire. So you get that nice efficiency, good rolling momentum with a larger diameter tires, a lot of good safety features. You can even see the reflective stripes shining really nicely right now. It's a good setup. So I'm gonna hit the motor real quick and then the battery. The Bosch drive system is one of the most advanced, probably one of the smarter e-bike systems I've encountered over the years, and they've just been refining it more and more. We've got a little magnet down there that passes a sensor, so it's measuring your rear wheel speed. It's measuring pedal cadence, so that's sort of how fast you're turning those cranks, and then how hard you push, pedal torque. It's measuring those 3 signals over 1,000 times per second. Bosch, they make automotive, they make sort of industrial equipment, some washer and dryer, washing machines, a lot of good stuff, even sensors like an iPhone. So they're using that technology to make this a really responsive ride. It's one that doesn't ever feel out of control. There's no throttle or anything here. It's all based on how you pedal and what level of assist you choose. Okay? Now, in addition to sensing when you're pedaling, it's also trying to sense when you shift. So I talked to the folks at Bosch and they're like, yeah, we're measuring like your pedal strokes and kind of tracking that. And then if we feel like a spike in pressure, we're assuming that you might be shifting gears, and we just take some of the power out of the drivetrain there. We just kind of ease the motor back a little bit, and it makes it easier for the derailleur to work. It's going to make it easier for that chain to change sprockets, and maybe it's not going to bend the teeth quite as easily. So it's just a really good system. Very few other motors do that. They don't have shift detection. That's kind of unique to Bosch. And then there's this alloy skid plate here, and you'll notice how BULLS has tipped the motor up and kind of integrated it with the down tube of the frame. So this is a really beautiful implementation. I've seen other bikes where it's just forward and it protrudes and it's got a big plastic casing, whereas this one's just, it matches the paint. It's still protected, but it looks a little bit nicer. Compared to Shimano or Brose, the Bosch motors, the Performance line in particular, is a little bit heavier. Weighs about 8.8 pounds versus maybe 6 or 7, kind of depending on the level. But again, high torque here, very sort of high precision reads. And there's that smaller sprocket. You heard me say 18 tooth. Well, each single crank revolution like this, that sprocket spins 2.5 times. So I think it gives the motor a mechanical advantage. It also creates really good chain retention, and it tends to start and stop very quickly. So those are all pluses, but one of the trade-offs is that smaller sprocket, there's a reduction gearing and there's a little bit of drag introduced in that system. So if you're pedaling this without the motor assisting you, or you're trying to go above 20 miles per hour, there's a little bit of drag. You know, not a ton. And in my experience, I have ridden these without motor support just for fun, and I've done that so I could use the lights and then maybe save or extend my battery, especially if I'm on flats or maybe going down a hill. I'll go down to off on assist. Now, I told you I would look at the battery. I'm going to do that over here on the step-through frame. So I've got the key. It's ABUS, and I think you could get this key to like, so you could get one of those accessories, maybe a folding lock or something, and you can order the same key. So you can see there's like a plus key card right there with a code, and you send that to ABUS and they send you a lock that's key to like. So I'll just turn this key here. There we go, and you can see that the battery's starting to come out, but it doesn't just flop out, which is really nice. It sort of stops there. And then there's this little button, press at the top, and that allows you to come the rest of the way out. I'm still gonna be careful because there's that fender right there, and I don't wanna scratch the bike. And it's a little bit tricky with this key in the way, so I'm gonna take that out of the way. You can see a little bit better. It's kind of hard to do with one hand. There it is, up, and I did bang the fender a little bit. So this is a two-hand thing. The battery does weigh a little bit more. Before, when they had the power packs, there are these plastic batteries, and they weighed about 5.7 pounds. This power tube weighs about 6.3 on its own, and then when you add that metal casing, I'm trying to carefully get this out, there we go. This casing here that says EVO, that adds a little bit more weight. So this is actually 7.2 pounds total right now, a little bit heavier, but again, nice implementation and pretty tough shielding that BULLS has designed. There's the charging port at the bottom, and then there's a little LED readout, gives you some idea of how full it is if you've stored this separately from the bike, and it's going to reduce the weight of the bike. So a lot of times if I'm putting this on a car rack, I will take the battery off just to make it easier to lift, a little less precarious, and I'll store this in a cool, dry location. Definitely avoid dropping it. There isn't really a handle or strap or anything on this, so you just want to hold it securely. Lithium-ion batteries are known for being fairly lightweight. They last a long time if you store them appropriately, and if you kind of keep them between 20 and 80%, especially if you aren't using it, try to keep it around half full. That way it's not stressing the cells. It's a nice way to go. 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours on this thing. And I wanted to show you the charger. Here it is. So BULLS is shipping the 4 amp charger, which is a little bit faster. It's fairly lightweight, 1.7 pounds. And it just means with a high capacity battery like this, you're gonna be able to get out there and ride, and then charge and get back out just that much quicker. I really appreciate that. So you're getting really top of the line kit on both of these bikes. And before I put that back on, I'm just gonna walk you through the display since this one still has the battery on it. Go ahead and press the power button up here. Comes to life pretty quickly. This is grayscale monochrome. It is backlit, but it's sunny right now. You can't really see it. It's sort of a faint white glow. You can't really adjust that. It's just sort of always on. I don't think it draws a whole lot of power. You can swivel this a little bit if you don't over tighten it, but it's not removable. So Bosch has another one called the Intuvia. It's a little bit bigger. Now that's actually my preference personally because it has a little micro USB port on the side. You could charge your phone or a Garmin or something, tap into that high capacity battery we talked about. This one has the port, right? But I've talked to Bosch and I've tested it, and that's really only for diagnostics. They didn't make it functional, which, Bosch, I really wish you would make that kind of an update, like improve that, because otherwise I think this is a decent display. In an application like this, you don't necessarily need all the readouts, but it does compromise a little bit from the Intuvia. If you live near a shop and you're getting the bike, you can pay like 150, 200 bucks to have them upgrade the display, and I personally would. It adds some price to the bike, but I don't know, I just like that display a lot better, and it is removable. So if you're commuting, you can take it off, whereas this one's gonna take some sun, rain damage, it might get scratched, people might mess with it, and again, the battery locks to the bike, but people could still turn it on and mess with it. So if we hold the plus button here for a second, you get a little light icon that appears, and then the light turns on. So that's what I mean, you can see the light from the side in addition to the front. It's a pretty good setup. And then that backlight, I get the impression, it's just kind of like one LED with like a light tube, so it's not the world's brightest light. You could always add one right here unless you got a seat post suspension. I think it keeps you seen, but it's not quite as nice as like this one over here. The Iconic has a supernova. It's wired in, so when you pull the brakes, it actually goes bright. I mean, this thing is awesome, but you're paying a lot more for that bike, and that's a high-speed bike. So for 20 mile per hour application, like this is fine. So coming back to the display for a second here, we've got speed, it's in miles per hour, but if we hold minus and tap the power button, it switches to kilometers per hour. Down here we have the light icon and a little infographic, 5 bars, just like on the battery we saw earlier. So there's a 20% steps, not quite as precise. I would like to see a percentage readout, but that's how it is for this display and for the Intuvia. Bosch has a new one called the Kiox, and it does have percentage and its color and everything, but that adds to the price even more. So I think BULLS was trying to keep this cheap or relatively affordable for the quality of all the other components. Now I can press plus or minus, and that's going to change assist levels. So off, we go to Eco, Tour, EMTB, which used to be called Sport, but when you get the CX motor, remember this is like a mountain bike motor. EMTB, it basically reads a little bit more into how hard you're pushing. So you don't have to shift gears and change things as much. You just pedal a little bit harder and the bike responds and the motor responds naturally. So I actually really like EMTB mode, and it does allow you to focus on changing gears. Doesn't mean you have to also be pressing plus and minus and maybe getting a little bit distracted. So that's cool. And then at the top, turbo. This is for when you don't want to push very hard. You just want the bike to give you a good help. And I use that for climbing hills or if I'm tired. Now if I hold the minus key for a second here, we go from trip distance to total distance. and then range. Range is dynamic, so we're at turbo right now. It says 26 miles. So I'd estimate about 30 miles is your minimum range in the highest level of assist. And in eco, it says, okay, 82. So maybe 80 to 100 miles. And then if we hold this again, it goes back to basically just focusing on what level of assist you're in. Now keep in mind, if you're on one of these other menus like trip distance and you press plus or minus, it sort of temporarily shows you your assist level and then it flashes back. If you want to clear your trip distance, you hold plus and minus for reset, and there you go. And if you're in one of the 4 levels of assist and you press this button down here, that's walk mode, and then you press plus, well, the motor just, look at that, pushes the bike forward. And that could be really useful if you are in a park or some environment where you don't feel comfortable riding, maybe you're walking through grass, or you get a flat tire or something. I'm really glad that BULLS left that enabled, because some of the other e-bike companies were disabling it for a while, and that was a real bummer. I think that's about it, you guys. It's been fun just exploring this bike and comparing year over year what they've upgraded. I think the biggest change is just that they have the integrated battery, which looks really nice. But I can see why this is one of their more popular models. You know, it balances comfort with affordability and utility, and it rides really well. And it's got, you know, premium drivetrain and drive systems here that are just gonna hold up really well. BULLS offers a 2-year comprehensive warranty with 5 years on the frame. That's just pretty fantastic, and it's all like dealer oriented, so you can go in, you could test ride this, you could compare it back to back and decide whether you want to spend the extra money on something like that. That is a sweet bike, but really I think the big choice is going to be, do you want the wave frame, you want the mid step, which I think still, it's obviously trying to be like unisex here, but as a guy, you know, the high step is the more masculine, like this, but I think the mid step is actually very performant and still masculine looking if that's what you're into. So anyway, I'm gonna hop on, let's do a little ride test. Okay guys, I'm gonna take this up to EMTB mode because I think that's the most dynamic and you'll still be able to hear how the motor responds. I do wanna point out that they've got this little rubber cover here, and if you were plugged in, let's say this crank arm gets bumped, it would sort of bump and maybe even disconnect the plug. Now, the proprietary design here is pretty sturdy. It's not gonna like crack the interface or something. It'll just come unplugged. But I feel like the rubber cover is actually a little bit hard to line up and get it to stick in sometimes. So I feel like there's a little bit of adjustment that could happen there. And you know, it's right there a little bit below where the fender is. So I feel like a little bit of water and stuff could get there. It hasn't been a problem. I'm not hearing people complain about that in the forums or anything, but I don't know. It'd be nice if it was a little bit higher, or maybe here, and maybe could have a little different cover that's more reliable. It's a minor gripe, but I am trying to review this. I'm trying to be thorough with you guys and give you feedback. Yeah, so that would be one of the areas that I'd like to see improved a little bit. Just gonna stow that kickstand. Looks like this has some sort of iRack attachment point here, so it would work with their accessories, that little red button. Okay, just gonna start pedaling. Here we go. See that headlight rattling a little bit? That's what I was talking about. So it's gonna sort of interrupt the beam pattern versus up here where it would be sprung. Down there it's unsprung. And see how efficiently this rolls. I mean, you know, those bigger wheels, they do raise the frame a little bit, but I think they've done a good job just sort of accounting for that with the frame design here. It's comfortable. I'm fairly upright. This frame might be slightly small for me, but there's some good adjustability with that seat post. Nice comfortable grips and everything. And we just hit 20 miles per hour, so the motor sort of faded out there at the end. It is possible to go faster than that. I'm gonna try to do that real quick here. So there we're up to 21, 22, 23, 24. You know, it's doable, especially with such efficient tires. Fairly stiff frame in this case as well. I'm in a higher gear, but if I shift down, you'll hear how it sort of changes and the motor becomes a little bit more pronounced, sort of high pitched. So let's do that. There we go. I'm in a really high gear here. shift, 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 shift. There we go. Right, so this drive system can support you up to 120 RPM, which is really nice. I mean, you saw me, I was spinning pretty fast, and that's what I like to do if I'm going from high speed, like descending, into a climb. I like to downshift so that I'll be able to climb more efficiently, give myself a mechanical advantage pedaling. Not all of the Bosch systems support that many RPM. Like the Active Line Plus, they only support 100, like 105 RPM, whereas this is 120. Again, it's an electric mountain bike motor. So I really appreciate that. Well, I know you guys like to see what this looks like third person, so I've recruited Fernando to help out with a little ride test. He's over there on the trapeze, and I'm here on the Iconic. Just gonna boot this up. Love how quickly the Bosch system turns on. And I'm ready, buddy. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. I got that tail light working pretty well. See the headlight there, and it's aimable too, so you can get that thing really dialed in. Nice. Looking good, bud. Thank you. Oh boy, he got a pedal strike. You want to raise that inside pedal when you're turning. Like this, and then turn. It's a good little rider tip for you guys. Where'd he go? Want to come to a brake test? He's doing a wheelies. Nice, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this should be pretty fun. Even though you can't see that front sprocket 18 tooth, you can see the chain. You can see that nice plastic chain cover. Really nice to have that. It'll keep your pants or your dress clean, especially on these like mid-step or low-step frames. Huge range on that rear cassette. I'm just really impressed. I don't see urban city neighborhood bikes like this with 11 to 46 very frequently. So that's nice, especially on just class 1 product like this, 20 mile per hour top speed. I'm going to pedal through and just shift through the entire range to give you some idea. Listen for that shift detection. So the shift should be a little bit smoother, but it's still a good idea to ease off a little bit when you're shifting gears so that you're sending a physical signal to the motor to back off, as well as relying on that shift detection. So here we go. Excellent stopping power too. You see at the end there, I was pedaling really slowly. That's the highest gear. So I almost feel like, you know, in some ways it's like you could very comfortably pedal this way above 20 miles per hour. And descending hills is a great example of that. Just, you're not going to get motor support, and then there's that little bit of drag going on. So it's an interesting trade-off. I don't know how much more expensive it is to have the Dior XT versus Dior, to have that really wide range. Maybe they could go with, I don't know, a different size sprocket up front, and then a slightly smaller in the rear to save a little bit of money, and they can mess with the displays and stuff. It's all, you know, minor details and things that you could change yourself if you wanted to. I think I would probably end up staying in these lower gears myself, riding this bike frequently. From here you can get an idea of what that suspension fork is doing as I ride and just enjoy the sights. You know, all in all, I'm impressed with this product. You are paying a little bit more, but you're getting some premium hardware. and the comments on this bike have been pretty good. So I'd invite you back into the forums to share your thoughts, maybe some pictures or accessories that you like for this. I've recorded all the specs and details, measured them myself, doing a really good job there, trying to get the quality so you guys can make an informed decision. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'll see you back at the site, ElectricBikeReview.com. Have fun out there, be good to each other, ride safe.